Hi, this is Tony Tolato, and my look at the Expanse starts in a moment. Hi, this is Tony Tolato, and welcome to the Inner Workings. This is our episode 3, The Diversity of the Expanse. It's the first of 2 parts on that very important subject. When The Forbidden Planet came out in the late 1950s, it was an all-white crew. The original Star Trek, which borrowed a lot from Forbidden Planet, decided to diversify to reflect the changing culture of America. And now with The Expanse, that diversity is front and center and a very key to the characters and the plot of The Expanse. The embodiment of that diversity is Cas Anvar's Alex Kamal, and I spoke to him at San Diego Comic-Con at the beginning of Season 1.
I play fighter pilot Alex Kamal, who is a really unique blend. He is a Mars-born Pakistani of Earth descent with a Texas accent. So he is a real potpourri of fun. The reason being that Martians in our world, Martians were colonized by the Asians, the Pakistani Indians, and the Texans. So all the descendants of the Mars colony all are from that melange of cultures. Many of them have Texas accents. My character comes from the Mariner Valley, which is a big rift on Mars, and that's where the Texans landed. And so my background is a whole mix of East Indian, Pakistani, and Texas. So he's a bit of a Southern man. He talks with a Southern drawl, and he's always got a wisecrack or some sort of sarcastic, sardonic thing to say whenever they're in some kind of a stressful situation.
The self-proclaimed misfits of the Rosamante were Alex Kamal and Amos Burton, played by Wes Chatham.
Well, there's a novella called The Churn that's a part of the book series, and it's about Amos's origin, where he came from and the relationships that he had. So when I read the book, The Churn, he's a little bit different in the book series than he is in the Churn, and it was very important for me to play. This is the road, the path that I wanted to go on. So when we first started, I was very forceful about saying, this is what I want Amos to be. This is what I want. It's way more interesting to me. There's not a bravado to him. There's not he's really a survivor, and he's been through a lot, and he's went through so much trauma in his life that he's lost his ability to really empathize or to connect in that way. But what's different about him is that he wants to have that. He wants to be that. He wants to hope one day that he can connect back into that thing, and he wants to be a force of good for these people. And that's why he's so close with Naomi, and the relationship's so special to him, because she's kind of the moral compass that operates outside of his body. She showed him how to behave and interact and what's the right thing to do, and he trusts that. He doesn't trust a lot of things. When that relationship's challenged, you start to learn who Amos really is and how he needs her and what he becomes without her and without that influence. The dynamic of the relationship has changed, and in season 2, you get to see who Amos really is without that relationship and why he needs it.
Pretty scary. And in terms to the question you asked about, how much do we get to contribute to our characters? We're really blessed. I've never worked on a show that has this kind of creative collaboration. Literally, I mean, we as actors, we get together every weekend and work on the scripts before we go in, and that I've never had that before. I've never had that luxury, and we do it because we want to, because we love it. And when we get together and we rehearse, I can't tell you how much of season 1 end product came out of us taking the script and just hammering through it and shooting do you really think that Amos would like what? And he'd be like, yeah, you know what? Yeah, and he'd be like, I don't think Alex, and we're like hashing things out. And
we do full rehearsals, directors there, writers there,
and we come up with ideas. I mean, an example being like the end of season 1 where Holden is trying to get back to the ship because he's radiation poisoned, and he confronts Kenzo. That scene was not in the script originally. That came out of one of our rehearsals where we were like, Holden's going to have to shoot a guard out of nowhere and then finally we said, well, what if it was Kenzo? What if it was someone who betrayed them? And then they worked it out in the script, and all of us kind of like shot our little 2 cents in, and it realized into this amazing scene that ended up having kind of a very nice wrap up to that relationship with Kenzo and Holden. Served the same function that the scene had in the initial thing, but came out of a beautiful creative collaboration. I
I get to do some really fun stuff that has been contributed by myself or by my fellow actors who say, what if Alex did this? And I'd be like, that's a great idea. I really like that idea. One of the things I got to do was I get to talk to my ship. I get to bond really emotionally with the ships that I fly, and that's kind of been an evolution that has happened over the 2 seasons that I got to contribute. I mean, you get to see a lot more of the Martian side of him. You get to hear a lot more of his personal life from his backstory with his family. That whole aspect of his life is given a lot of time and attention in season 2. Yeah.
I like that he has that little picture of his family.
Yeah.
Like most pilots do, they put it on.
Yeah, that's a huge part of this arc for this season, and we have a really good arc for the whole season 2. The two of us, because we're kind of the misfits. The two of us are really kind of the misfits in the show, and almost opposite poles.
We're the misfits in real life.
It's true. We're all very much like our characters.
And speaking of backgrounds, here's Wes Chatham on Amos's background.
Amos Burton is a guy that he worked for, and long story short, he murdered him and took his identity.
That was.
Yeah. So it's interesting. It's interesting that it's not his real name. Amos Burton is not his real name. I think we'll actually, as the show goes on, really get into that part of his life, that aspect. Like, Alex actually kind of touches on his past and his history, and he starts to try to open up to Alex, but he doesn't really know how.
Being the misfits, we end up kind of walking out of the ship at the same time and going out for R&R at the same time, ending up in the same bars, and we always end up talking to each other, not because we're so close, but more because we're so different from the rest of the crew, and we just by happenstance end up spending a lot of time together and hanging out, and his perspective on the world and my perspective on the world could not be more polar opposites, and yet somehow we understand each other. He really understands Alex. Like, he reads Alex like a book. He knows Alex is playing the whole married wedding ring thing, and Alex is kind of like, how the hell do you know I'm not married anymore or whatever? And because he's incredibly perceptive, and Alex provides insight into him on an emotional level, trying to get him to open up. And again, in season 2, it escalates very quickly, very dramatically between the two of them. It's going to be a very interesting journey.
We do not know the future at this moment. I think it really. I do know that Amazon picked us up as a streaming partner. Which is really exciting for us, and I know that Sci-Fi and Amazon will be a great partnership, and I think, I'm not 100%, but that Amazon's going to re-release the first season right before the second season comes out, to really kind of get people on board. So that makes me really excited about that.
Wes Chatham talks more about the evolution of Amos.
The difference between this season is it was him and Naomi. Amos is very tribal in that way. He's very connected to the people that are around him. But since they went through what they went through together, it's broadened to Holden and Alex. And in our relationship grows a lot, and we go through a lot in this second season. But he starts to expand his affection for Naomi and his trust all the way up to the first Secretary's brother, all the way up to the rest of the crew, of the Rossi.
He's an interesting character. So what are Amos's motivations?
I think in terms of Amos's character, I think that basic survival is his motivation. He's not. He is not caught up in the concept of justice or revenge. He doesn't feel in that way. That's revenge is an emotional based motivation. He doesn't have that. So for him, he wants to survive. He's not concerned with what's going on around the world. He cares about his family, and he's willing to do whatever he has to do to take care of them. But survival is his instinct. It's what's motivating him.
One of the beautiful things about the show and the cast is the characters. Is each of us has such an incredibly different perspective on these events. I mean, if you were to ask Holden, Stevens, is it revenge or just? Like, his motivation is completely different than Amos, and even Alex. I wouldn't say survival. Alex is heavily motivated by justice and is a very moral character. He believes in people in the family unit. He is very, very tormented by the injustice that has happened to the Belters, and in season 2 he has to deal with the consequences of having witnessed what happened to all of them, and that's going to have a profound effect on him. And he really does. He's very empathetic and very sensitive and very concerned with the impact of what's going on all the people around him. And I don't know. I mean, I think actually, I take it as a compliment that Amos kind of finds Alex interesting as a friend, because Amos is such a unique person and such a unique force. He picks his friends really, really, really selectively because, like you said, he's all about survival. So for him to actually invest energy in someone, which is what happens in season 2, we really do start to develop something. It says something about Alex that Amos has found compelling, which I think is really cool. And that helps me inform my character.
Wes Chatham says he actually admires some of the qualities in Amos.
I admire the fact how little Amos cares about what other people think, and I think that there's a freedom in that, and sometimes I wish I had that to be free from caring about people's opinion or the need to be liked. But that's interesting to as an actor to play him is the social connection that we have as I'm talking to you and we're doing this and we're smiling to each other, whatever. He doesn't understand that. He doesn't have that give and take. So it's really funny, his point of view, because he can be severely rude to people, but he has no idea that he's being rude. And that's fun to do. That's fun to play when he's doing that. But on the flip side, that's one of the things I wouldn't want to have, because I don't want to be rude to people.
Can Cas throw in some Texasisms once in a while?
Yeah, I think you're gonna hear a lot. They're usually trying to tone me down and hold me back when I'm throwing stuff like that in there. Whenever we're in rehearsals, I'll toss out some Texas-ism, and the gang will be like, I don't think this is the opportune time for that particular one.
Yeah, when Donkey Balls hit, then now you can't shut him off. So he tries to throw something in every line.
That was actually scripted. Yeah. That's the title of that episode. Yeah. So I was like, you guys can't stop me from saying Donkey Balls, because that's the title of this show. So yeah, you couldn't stop me on that one. But no, I'm always looking for an opportunity, because this is a very intense show. This show is incredibly dramatic, and we are all fighting for our lives every single day. And any moment there is to find levity, to find humor, not in a slapstick, jokey kind of way, but that's what human beings do. Like, we can't keep pressing on that nerve over and over and over again. It'll go numb. There has to be relief. And we do that in real life. I mean, I haven't participated in the military myself, but I have a lot of military friends, and they tell me about when they're under pressure. They're always looking for things to try and lighten the mood and kind of bring things in perspective for themselves. And I think that's essential to kind of helping people absorb what we're giving them.
Hey, thank you for listening to Sci-Fi Talk, but stick around. I have more. Let's get back to Sci-Fi Talk. I'm Tony Tillotto. And on that important subject of diversity, both actors weigh in on it.
I'm proud of that fact. I'm proud of that fact because I think on a lot of different levels, but I think ultimately it's a realistic look. Mathematically, you look at, we're evolving in the way we're evolving, and we colonize these places, and humans do what humans do. That's what we're probably going to start to look like. I mean, I think it's a realistic look of how it is, which I think is interesting, because now that the separation of that is gone, now it's planetism. It's like it's planets against each other. So it's interesting how we'll always find those separations. We'll always find those. We're tribal in nature like that. So
I'm with Wes. I'm incredibly proud. I mean, as someone who has had to deal with that type of casting my whole career, to be part of a show where my race and my ethnicity have absolutely nothing to do with the character, even though it exists. He is of Pakistani Indian descent. Mixed in with Texan, because those are the original colonizers of Mars. It hasn't come up once in an episode, and it's never referred to because it's irrelevant. And to go one step further, if you look at the casting on this show, all of our females, if you look at Ava Sarala, Naomi, Julie Mao, and now Bobby Draker, all non-white females. Name one show that has nothing to do with ethnicity, where all your females are non-white and don't have a male around which they're revolving. Like, the diversity is not just about skin color. The show has taken it to another level, and that I'm hugely proud of.
Seasons 4 and 5 will now be on Amazon Prime, and Wes Chatham and Cas Anvar talk about the buzz now that it is on that Amazonian network.
You know what's interesting is that people are just for the very fact that it got released on Amazon. A lot of people that like similar things, it comes up in their suggestions.
All right.
And I felt personally, anecdotally, I felt an explosion of like energy towards the show since it got released on Amazon. And every time I go to the grocery store, everywhere I go, there's people that come up, and 90% of the people since it got released on Amazon is like, oh my God, I love your new show. And I'm like, new show? We've been doing this for 4 years. What are you talking about? And they're like, yeah, God, what? They only know it through Amazon and all the press that we got recently. So it's kind of like this rebirth. Or, I was telling Kaz, it's like it took us 4 years to do our first season. That's what it feels like. Like our first season just came out. And so it's kind of like this extraordinary energy behind. Like, we're going into season 5 now, and I feel excited and butterflies and going into it more than I did even the first season. Because it's like this thing is really kind of happening now. Thanks to all you guys.
I think one thing to answer your question about maybe what has kept it from getting the notice that it's getting now is it's not just a science fiction show. It's a great show, and the show is as much energy and time and effort as we put into the science, making it spectacular, making the production values, everything look like a fantastic epic. It's actually really about people and just the interactions and the relationship with these human beings, that if you strip all the science away, all the science fiction away, it's still a great show about human beings dealing with the reality of their world. And I think that Amazon is really focusing on that now, and I think that's going to attract a much broader fan base, because the science fiction term has a very feral base to it. The science fiction fans are ravenous, but there's some people who are maybe intimidated by that because they think, oh, it's all about technology and tech and this and that, and ours isn't. Like, our tech is almost invisible. It's like we have cell phones and we keep them in you don't show it off.
Yeah.
And that's how ours is. So I think that's going to really be attractive to the general population.
Joining the cast in season 4 is Burn Gorman, who is Adolphus Mertry.
The level of talent, yes. Yeah. Well, it's not a well-known fact, but these guys meet on their days off to discuss the scripts, and that is unheard of.
Because he wants to go for a beer.
This is it.
And he's like, what the hell's wrong with you guys?
But it's like, it sets an intention, and we want it to be the best that it can be, which is a pleasure to join an ensemble who are like, no, we like our job. It really was a brilliant experience, because it's it's sort of grounded in truth, great showrunner, and passion from the actors. So yeah, it was a pleasure.
What's changed for you guys working on it for Amazon as compared to what in the past?
I think there's a little bit more freedom. There's no restrictions for time. Like, if it's 47 minutes, if it's 55 minutes, whatever it takes to tell the story properly. We don't have any restrictions on that. We don't have to worry about commercial breaks. The writers get to write the show as just an epic kind of hour of entertainment. They don't have to worry about where to break it. And there's a bit more freedom in terms of the language and the action that can take place. It's a little more adult. Avasarala is off the leash a little bit more, and Amos gets to have a little bit more fun this year.
But I also, he kind of went into a little bit, but the structure of an episode around commercials is a very specific thing, of a certain setup to the commercial setup thing, and I've never been a huge fan of that type of structure, because I feel like it pushes too quickly. And so I love that this is kind of more, this gives more room to breathe. you can really structure it and plot it in like a 3-act structure or a 5-act structure in a way that's not beholden to commercial breaks. And that's one of the major things that I love about being on a new format.
One of the biggest things is the support we're getting. The PR support, the promotional support, the Amazon is like, we're being treated like guests of honor in this world, and it's like we're banners. I know, it's just we just feel like rock stars. So that's really exciting, and that makes us really excited to get back to work and produce. It's next level, for sure.
There's also an advantage that their main line of business is not this.
Yes, that's right.
It's like there's like you're filming and all this stuff is being shipped out all over the place.
Yeah.
And you don't really have to worry about the money running dry.
Exactly.
Like you would on television.
Exactly.
That's a little bit of security there.
Yep.
Alex has a new and improved Rosamante.
Oh, he is so proud of his machine, but it's beyond that, though. You could see it in the episode, like he's like a kid with a new toy, but that is not about, it's not a hot rod that he's trying to soup it up so that he can go and do donuts in the parking lot. He literally wants to make sure that he can keep his family safe. He lost some people in the first couple of seasons that he's never really forgotten. And he blames himself, he blames the proto-molecule, he blames the situations that he was not equipped to protect his family. And I think he was instrumental in getting that keel-mounted railgun there. Obviously, it's the whole team that had to vote on it, but I think he was pushing for it so that he could defend his family. So he takes it very seriously, as much as he is a big kid with a new toy. It's with a dark kind of side to it.
Is it almost like an extension of himself a little bit?
Absolutely, yeah. I don't know if you've noticed, but Alex does not have a lot of relationships.
Right.
Like, even his friendships, like, he doesn't really talk about himself. He did a little bit with Amos, but he doesn't really talk about himself. The strongest bond he has is with the machine. It's like he's like that guy that names his car and tinkers with his car. And he doesn't necessarily know how to connect with human beings the same way as he does with his machine. So,
what does Amos connect with?
He's very similar. I mean, he connects to machines. He connects to that is his happiest time is when they're in the middle of space and they've been 6 months in and they got 3 months to go, and he just has this routine of working on the reactor, putting things together, and also just being surrounded by the only people that he really cares about in the world, and that's his Rossi family and his buddy Cas and Alex and Captain Holden and Naomi. And so that's his happiest place, and all the stuff that they're involved with the politics and the world bending. He doesn't. The only reason he's there is because they're there. And if he had to say, they would just go do their own thing, make a living, live out the rest of their life, and not be involved with all this stuff. Fucking Holden's always getting us into all this stuff.
Amos has a phone conversation with Clarice Mao, who is played by Nadine Nicole, to start the 4th season.
That phone conversation was after a long ride back to Earth. Right. When we transported back to Earth, where
which we didn't see.
Yeah, so she actually is a mechanic as well, an engineer as well. So they had her for almost a year of travel. Mm-hmm. They had her come work with Amos in the machine shop. So over time we ended up getting close, and I kind of saw things in her that are very similar to what I'm dealing with, so I kind of understood her from her perspective. Right. And we had this great relationship of working together, and I realized at a point that she was so, her father had such an impression on her that she kind of didn't really, it wasn't really necessarily her fault that she got in the position that, even though she tried to kill people I love, she was kind of brainwashed in a way that she was truly lacking understanding. She's not I don't think she's a bad person. Yeah. And I got to know that, so then it was really trying to provide her a way out to be able to kill herself. That was like my act of promise, to leave that, give her that opportunity and say, listen, I know this is a terrible thing, I'll give you a way out. And she didn't take it. Right. So then it's like, well, if you're not going to take it, then here's how you survive in prison.
Cas Anvar hints that Bobby Draper and Alex Kamal will intersect in the future.
I can tell you that Alex and Bobby have nice future ahead of them in terms of that following up on that. I can't exactly say when it's going to happen, but that friendship is not done yet. They have a very special connection because they're both military, they're both Martians, and they're both kind of isolated, and they've both suffered a lot of loss. They've lost their people, and so I think they connect on a number of different levels. And for some reason, Alex admires her a lot. He respects the hell out of her as a military person, and they just connect as friends in a very unique way. That's kind of unusual for him because he doesn't connect like that with anybody.
Burn Gorman talks on Murtry, possibly having some issues being a soldier.
I was quite interested in the dynamic of a military man coming out of the military and working for, say, a Halliburton do you know what I mean? And it's a really interesting dynamic that when a leader, a military man loses men or women, loses his people, there's a deep sense of, I want to find out who the perpetrators were, I want revenge, it's a dereliction of duty to lose people. I was quite interested in that. So I would say that mixed up in it all is a desire to make the situation good, to take control. He doesn't like belters. He can see that their ownership or their presence on this planet is not going to be helpful for the end game, which is to get as much minerals out of the thing as possible. But I think he's morally very interesting. I think it becomes apparent later on, but very complex. I think our characters recognize each other. You recognize something in me, and very interesting character. It's right. You're doing your job well.
It's an interesting dichotomy because we're all sharing the same space, but these two characters live in the shadows. Like someone like Alex, who's been through a lot.
Sure.
He hasn't gone into the darkness the way they have. He still is hopeful. He's still sympathetic, empathetic. Whereas these two, probably much better survivors than he is. But it's like people who have just they're on one side or the other of a line, and they're both very close to the line, but they're completely different shades. Like one's in the sun and one's in the shadow. Or these two, in this case, both of these guys are in the shadow.
And we're all good at our jobs.
And everyone's good at their job. It's just an interesting how their perspectives are so dramatically different on life, on how to approach life and how to live it.
I like you mentioned about the belters. I like that. It's very relatable because people look down on other people because they're different. And, unfortunately, we're still doing that now. And it's probably going to be with us forever. Now, what's it like to play that aspect of the series?
A realistic look at what we're like as human beings. I think with the Rossi crew in particular, though, I think we're a bit free of that. I don't think we see, based off the circumstances that we've been through and how we've had intimate relationships on all sides and all understanding of that, we don't have that barrier amongst us. And we don't operate in that barrier, and we don't really tolerate it in a lot of ways. I think there's something in our DNA that wants to separate yourselves from others and say that is the other and we're here, this is our tribe, that's that tribe, and we're right and they're wrong. And that's a really destructive quality.
And that is the end of episode 3 of The Expanse. On diversity, there will be more on diversity on the concluding part, so stay tuned. For The Inner Workings, this is Tony Tellado. Thanks for listening.